You know, it's interesting. Our first year together was Vince Carter's rookie year, and Vince Carter was phenomenal. He was a great player in his first few years with the Raptors. After he won the dunk contest, it was like traveling with Elvis or the Beatles. He was that big. We would fly into cities at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the crowd outside the hotel was incredible. He was a remarkable talent. I think what happened, there were some decisions made around him that I don't think necessarily were the best for the team. I think when you allow a player to have too much say in the direction of the team, I think that's not good either. And unfortunately, I think it got to the point where it just became a marriage that went bad. Does he deserve a lot of credit for what he did here? Absolutely. Vince Carter was a phenomenal player. He put basketball in Canada on the map, particularly in Toronto and Southern Ontario. He was a phenomenal player. And in his early time, he was a wonderful ambassador for it. As he went along, a lot of times it's not only how you handle failure, it's how you handle success. And I think it's a tough lesson to learn. And I think that he had some challenges with that. I still think he's a very talented player. And unfortunately, it didn't work out well at the end. But when it's all said and done, I'm being diplomatic here because I think when it's all said and done, you got to look at the forest, not the tree. He was a sensational player here, and you try to remember the good. It ended bad, and I think fans remind him that every time. And I'm disappointed it ended that way. I think if he had to do it all over again, in his heart of hearts, he would probably want to do it differently.
I mean, I understood his frustration. We were all frustrated. I mean, they're going through different coaches, and players are in and out of here, and the general manager comes in, and they're trying to make a decision on what direction of the franchise. But I'll never forget, the pastor of my church in Michigan once told me, a man's greatest strength is his greatest weakness. And by that I mean his greatest strength was Vince, as Jack mentioned, the moment he won that slam dunk contest in Oakland, he went from here to here. He no longer was a very, very good player. He went to the upper echelon of being great. And all the groundswell and trying to re-sign him and the whole focus on we got to keep Vince and we got to keep Vince. And what happened is they started saying, okay, like, who do you want on the ball club and where do you think we're headed with this and how about this and what do you think? And all of a sudden, what's that saying about power?
Power corrupts.
Yes.
And he was a kid.
And he's a kid, and he's all of a sudden making, he's trying to name Julius Erving as the general manager, and he likes this player, he likes that player, and you can't do that. You just can't.
Making the leap to one of the major networks.
I think for me, in life, growing up in Brooklyn, obviously my mom, your coaches when you're a kid, your baseball coaches, your basketball coaches, your teachers, your aunts, your uncles, all those folks like that, just people in the neighborhood. I grew up in a real hardcore blue-collar neighborhood in Brooklyn, and it was everyone's, mom and dad, everyone looked out for each other, and then just growing up, getting into coaching, working for other coaches, working with other coaches. I consider a lot of my coaching friends to be mentors and people that really guided me in the right direction, not only in my career, but more importantly in my life. And then here in Toronto, the guy that gave Chuck and I both our biggest break of our career, Nelson Millman, who runs the show at the Fan 590 and is still there, he had the vision to see that putting us two together would work. And, I'm eternally grateful to him. And obviously there's a lot of other people in the industry as well here in Toronto that I'm grateful for. But if I had to think of one, it would be him because he's the one that got us started.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate to be in circles of a lot of very, very good people. But again, it comes down to, other than my mother, my next door neighbor was the high school basketball coach at Sammamish High School in Bellevue, Alex Pizzolatto, and he was unbelievable. I mean, he had no business taking me everywhere he went with his son. And I mean, we would go to University of Washington games as a little boy when the Sonics came in as an expansion team. I mean, it was unbelievable. And without that, I'm not sure where I would be today. Now, having said that, I know we're limited on time. I want to address a couple of things real quickly, and that's regarding failure. We all fail. The question is how you get to deal with failure, because whether you get where you were expecting a certain grade in school and you didn't get it, whether you are applying for an internship, you didn't get it, whether you're going to send out 100 letters and didn't get it. Let me tell you what, when I came out of school, I applied, and I still have, we don't have, in those days, you would write a letter, and we didn't have Xerox machines as available as they are now. There were no, and I'm dating myself, but it's true. We used, what would you call it with the copy paper?
Mimeograph.
Mimeograph. And you'd take 2 pieces of 8x11, put it in the typewriter, and that's how you would keep a copy for your files. And I still have those. I applied out of school. And remember, I had an internship for 2 summers at NBC. Okay, so I was fortunate. I get out of school at 21. I sent out 78 letters to medium-sized markets, because in those days, no one started off with the medium-sized markets. Elmira, New York. What was the other? Adirondack, New York, in that area.
Those are great exotic places.
The Mohawk Valley, I think that's where there was an opening for high school football and basketball. And I was sure I was going to get it in the Mohawk Valley. I applied to Salinas, Kansas. I mean, everywhere. Didn't get any letters. Some letters, no. Some would write me back, stuffed the envelope, the letter that I wrote. Sorry, no openings. Boom. Some were form letters. I didn't get one, not one. And I was so bummed out, and so you've got to make a decision. And I'll never forget, my mom told me, she would say, life is like an orange. You got to squeeze the most out of it. And I thought, that's kind of stupid and syrupy. But in a sense, it was true. Because what are you going to do, and how are you going to handle failure? Jack gets dismissed from Niagara. This is a D1 job. He was a very good coach. Gets dismissed. So what is he going to do? Is he going to wallow in self-pity? No. He picks up the phone. Hey, I got to start working. I got a family to feed. I got a wife. I've got kids, the whole bit. So my view for young people applying for jobs and just feel that you've hit that wall. You can't just stop at the wall. And don't think that you can just go around it. You can't go around it. You got to go through it. And the only way you go through a wall is how? You start pecking away and chiseling and chiseling and chiseling, and you bust it. And so don't get discouraged.
And all it takes is one person to like you. I mean, and as Chuck says, you're knocking down that wall. Sooner or later, you're going to penetrate that. And all it takes is one person to give you the break. And once you get that break, and I go back to what I said earlier, whether you went to Harvard or whether you went to Centennial, it don't matter. You're in now. And it's what you do standing on your own 2 feet that counts. And that ultimately is what matters. And how you present yourself and how hard you work every day and how passionate you are about what you do. And that doesn't even necessarily have to be sports journalism. It could be anything you decide to do. It's the passion that you bring to it.